The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
Welcome to the Central City Citizen, a PapiChuloRadio.com original series. Papi Chulo Radio, pop culture on demand. Today is Thursday, March 16th, 2023, and I'm your host, Professor X. During this podcast, we'll be having an in-depth discussion on the CW's The Flash. Please welcome my co-host, Dimitri Jasinger.
What's good, Central City?
And Jeffrey
Luck
Arue.
be a podcast tonight.
Let's jump into our discussion of Season 9, Episode 6, which was titled The Good, the Bad, and the Lucky, and aired March 15th, 2023. We're almost halfway through the final season. Here's the official synopsis of the episode. As Barry and Iris prepare for their new life, luck changes for those in Central City. Cecile takes on a case with Allegra's help involving a string of unfortunate and highly unexpected events. Meanwhile, Chester and Mark work with Keon to figure out her new abilities. Becky Sharp, at the beginning of the episode, walks into Jitters, and we get a voiceover about how lucky she is, with a little montage about how she falls in love, gets engaged, and then her luck suddenly changes. It seems to run out, and no matter what she does, bad things start happening to, including finding her boyfriend is in a coma, and she is accused of the crime that she obviously didn't commit. I mean, obviously, but then again, who knows? She needs a lawyer, and it doesn't seem like a long time since anyone has mentioned Cecile's day job, so hey, let's bring her in. I was happy to see Becky Sharp making a return. I really liked the character when she was introduced years ago. And I loved that brief scene with Kramer where she basically said, you need a lawyer. Jeff, what did you think about the reintroduction of Becky Sharp and the way they presented her to us at the beginning of the episode?
She was wonderful. I enjoyed her as well the last time that we saw her, which I believe was way back during the Thinker storyline, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, a very long time ago, at least 3 or 4 seasons.
A long time. It's been a while. I will say this. The only thing that just made me kind of when she was giving her voiceover narration was the fact that she was cognizant about Crisis. That's the only thing that I was like, because I don't think anybody knows about the Crisis outside of like the heroes on the show. So that was the only thing.
Good point.
Yeah, that was the only thing that kind of like took me out of the moment because, I mean, they clearly had a scene later on in the episode where they talk about Crisis and how she's different. So they didn't need that in her sort of cutesy narration. The cutesy narration outside of that was very cutesy and it worked for me. I loved the montage. I loved seeing this remixed version of her, you know, because when we met her the last time, like, she was lucky, but everyone was unlucky, and so this time around, she's just redonkulously lucky. Yeah, so all of that was, like, really nice, really cute. As you said, Professor, Kramer's reaction to it, because, like, she was, like, this ball of, just like the song that was playing, Sunshine, Lollipops, and Rainbows. And then all of a sudden, Kramer was, like, very sardonic, like, yeah, you're gonna need a lawyer. It was a great way to start the show, and to remind us of who she is.
And yeah, and Kramer didn't have a lot doing this episode, but I thought she was very well used. And also, you know, as I think I mentioned, back the first time we met, Becky Sharp, the actress playing her is a Canadian actress who was, you know, a PJ, a program jockey on YTV. And while I've never met her, I was good friends with another PJ. Shout out to PJ Paula. And so, you know, I really like the fact that they're bringing her back. One of the things I said going into what we know is going to be the last season of Flash, you know, I wanted to sort of, you know, revisit that, you know, get a sense of some of the highlights of the past seasons. And so I did like bringing her back, even if this was a sort of standalone filler episode. Anyway, in her office, Cecile is on the phone with Joe trying to coordinate living in 2 different cities, and she promises she won't miss her train, which means she's obviously going to miss that train. It's a classic Chekhov's train situation. At Star Labs, Barry and Iris are driving to Coast City for a conference, and they leave things in the hands of Team Flash. Allegra's having issues with her landlord and her hot water, so classic Chekhov's landlord situation. Mark and Chester go to work to figure out what Kion's powers are. I mentioned the obvious Chekhov's items, and while I noticed Cecile with the pillow and the blanket, I didn't realize that was a classic Chekhov's pillow and blanket situation. Dimitri, did you spot the significance of that? Did you figure there was something more significant? The fact that that Cecile was obviously, moving the stuff around in her office while she was talking to Joe.
And do you know who Chekhov is?
I do know who Chekhov is. I didn't like. I just thought it was like, I'm haphazardly moving like random things around, like sort of comedic. Like, you ever see cartoons where like they're digging through the sofa and like pull out like a remote and some change, and then like a bicycle and like, whatever. Like it gets more and more ridiculous. Anybody seen this? Just me?
I didn't see a bicycle, but
no, I think that was just an example.
I thought that's what like they were going for here. Like, she's just
I get it.
Pulling all sorts of random stuff out. So I didn't realize, because I mean, maybe this just strikes a tough chord with me as a millennial who cannot afford a house, but like, she has a house. Like, it just didn't register me. Why would you be sleeping in your office? So yeah, no, it totally caught me by left field when later on Allegra's like, have you been sleeping in your office? I totally did not catch it. Chekhov would be ashamed of me.
But having said that, it was nice that they sort of, threw those little elements in. I think it was, structurally. The episode, did, plant some of the breadcrumbs in place. Some of them were obvious, and as we'll talk about a little later, some of them were a little more subtle and a little more clever. But it's almost like when you're reading a detective mystery from the 1920s. You expect them to give you all the clues that you need, and I think they actually did a pretty good job of doing that in this episode. That all the big surprises were telegraphed, some clumsily, some otherwise. But anyway, Cecile agrees to take Becky's case, but wants to start on Monday, which obviously leads Becky to go, wait, seriously, what the fuck? I'm here in jail and you're just going to leave me until Monday, which, brings up a point that Jeff was talking about before, which is how can Cecile balance, having the family out living in the country if she's going to be not only a full-time superhero, but also a full-time lawyer for MetaHumans in the city. But then, things take a shift when Kramer comes in with the weapon that was used to attack Becky's fiance, and it turns out it's Becky's broken heel. So things are just getting worse for her. Jeff, what did you think about the dynamic between Becky and Cecile? As I mentioned, I thought it was a little callous on Cecile's part to basically say, yeah, I'll be back in the city on Monday. You can just stay in jail on the weekend, and we'll deal with that when I get back.
Yeah, it was a little
I didn't think that was what she was saying.
You didn't think that's what she was saying? She had a train to catch.
Well, I thought she was saying like they're not gonna hold you because there's not enough evidence against you to justify holding you. And that's why when Kramer comes in with the murder weapon or the attempted murder weapon, she's like, oh, well, now you're kind of screwed because now there's enough evidence to hold you. I didn't think it was like Cecile's like, a couple nights in a holding cell, never hurt anybody. Like, I thought she was saying, you're not going to be held right now because all the evidence is circumstantial. So I can go home.
Well, she said that she wouldn't be put in jail, that she would be probably there, in the holding cell in the police department. But then, yes, they found the additional stuff, so she was going to go to jail. But then they, let her out on good behavior, which that confused me. But I'm not I'm not that well astute in our criminal justice system here in the United States, so I don't know I don't know how she was able to walk the streets if they found the murder weapon. But anyway, Professor, maybe you can answer that for us. Maybe you know.
I would argue that is one of the big plot holes in this episode. Okay. It seemed like she was going to be held.
Yes.
And Cecile actually said, "No, you'll just be held here for the weekend," and then they find the murder, not murder weapon, but the attack weapon, which is her shoe, which would mean she's much less likely to be released. And yet the next scene, as we'll talk about, she's just out in the streets.
They were like, you look like an innocent white woman. Your white privilege you are bathed in white privilege. You can go.
This is pure headcanon, but I would suggest that because Kramer was convinced that she was innocent, just like Joe would be convinced that people were innocent, maybe that was, behind the scenes, maybe there was a deleted scene or anything like that, that it was Kramer basically saying, look, I'm sure she didn't do it. So, I'm going to, cut her some slack. But, there was nothing in the episode that suggested that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was another major plot hole that I will bring up later on. But outside of what we were just discussing, because you asked me about the dynamic, Cecile, throughout this entire episode, throughout the majority of the episode, the first half of the episode, she wasn't really acting like her usual self. And I know that she was really obsessed with trying to make things work, which, was a big question, as you referred to, Professor, that I had in regards to this whole weird-ass storyline about 2/3 of my family is moving out into the country, I'm staying in the city, and we have to somehow make it work. So this was the episode in which they decided to express how they were going to make it work. Was a little clumsy, a little fumbly in the way that they kind of handled it. Sure, but I will say this. It was great that they gave former DA Cecile Horton, now metahuman attorney at law Cecile Horton, something to do outside of just giving the Papa Joe pep talks.
And also, the fact that they address, the question that you mentioned, last week, which was, the idea of, this shouldn't be as simple as they seem to present it being, last episode. And it was nice that we sort of dealt the consequences of that decision in this episode, that it's not going to be as easy as Joe and Cecile seem to think it would be. And, it was nice that they addressed that, slightly clumsily, but still, they did.
I think they thought it was going to be as simple as Christine Sinclair, kicking a ball into the goal.
As a striker, that is exactly the sort of thing Christine Sinclair would do.
I knew that.
Cecile, Allegra, and Becky go to her... Yeah, no one's going to care about any of this.
I know,
Cecile,
right?
Allegra, and Becky go to Becky's apartment to investigate. Allegra uses her powers and finds a poker chip, which I thought was a really cool use of Allegra's powers, and I don't recall ever seeing that on the show before. The poker chip apparently belongs to her future brother-in-law, Tony, who's obviously bad news. Come on. When Tony sees the poker chip, he gets super nervous and claims Becky's fiancé, Dom, had a gambling problem and was in a lot of debt. And somehow he'd hidden that from Becky, but that's what we were being told. He gives him a lead on where the chip came from, and while they are investigating, some goons come in to kidnap Becky. Cecile's powers are largely useless, but Becky ends up helping to save herself by creating a distraction, smashing a bottle against the guy's face, and doesn't get shot as a result, which is somewhat surprising. And that lets Allegra blast them. Becky has no idea who the bad guys are. We're getting a lot of misdirects here, Dimitri. The misdirects. It seems like Becky is being targeted because of her fiance. It seems like Becky's bad luck is affecting Cecile's power. It seems like Becky's fiance is the one in trouble. All of these seems, it turns out, we'll find out later, are not true. But, in the context of the show, in terms of watching it, this is the way it's being presented. How did you think the misdirects were working? Were you taken in by them? Were you, engaged in the story?
Honestly, I wish they would have introduced Cecile's malfunctioning powers a little earlier, because the misdirect just seems so feeble. She's like, oh, you just got really nervous. And he's like, oh, yeah, well, my brother had a gambling problem. He made me promise not to tell you. And I'm just like, so you have empathetic powers and you just buying this shit? Like, I wish at the very least make Cecile's powers already be untrustworthy, because it just looks so clownish that she chases down this theory and then she's like, oh, wait, it was the brother, like, at the end of the episode.
That's a good point. But the way Tony, or the actor playing Tony, chose to play his uncertainty at that moment, I don't think you need to be an empath to figure out that, he was, having problems with that moment. At Star Labs, Chester and Mark start testing Khione for her meta powers. Something about Khion's kiss fixed Mark, as we saw, and otherwise, as he said, he shouldn't have survived his injuries. But Khione doesn't think she has any powers. They start testing her for cryogenic powers, but nothing happens in what may be an Arrowverse first, a montage in which nothing happens repeatedly. Mark is really upset about it. Jeff, what did you think about how they tried to coax out her powers? It's weird to think that, someone has powers, that you can just sort of, put them in that situation and they will manifest their powers in a way that you can measure and test. But also, what did you think about the dynamic between Khione and valued member of the Team Flash family, Mark, who, let's not forget, was a bad guy just a couple of weeks ago? It did seem like he was a completely different character in this episode.
Yeah, I guess that Barry Allen pep talk from last week worked because he had a whole, I'm a team player attitude adjustment this time around. Okay. Khione trying to get her Elsa on was adorable. I enjoyed it. It's like the pose, and you gotta think real hard, and you gotta feel it in your hands, and it was just, to me, it was cute. We haven't seen Danielle Panabaker as an actor on this show get the chance to do stuff like that. She either already has the powers and she's a meta-human trafficker, as Dimitri would say, or she's the science-y one that knows all the science-y stuff. And so, to be a kind of blank slate and to play around with the possibilities, it was kind of neat to see her as an actor play a character like that. There was an interesting moment between Mark and Khione where he takes a pause and he clears his throat. He looks at her in a sort of kind of way. I don't know if it has to deal with what we will be discussing about what happens to them later on, or I don't know if there's, as Beauty and the Beast would say, might as well throw in another Disney reference, there may be something there that wasn't there before. That I cannot tell you, but it was a little brief moment that I noticed. My whole thing is I understand that she is the sort of visual, physical embodiment of someone that you knew before. But for me, the first thing that you should test is her biology, do blood work, do this, that, or the other. I know that comes up later on, but in my mind, before trying to figure out what the powers are, I would have tried to figure out who she is, what's her, the chromosomes and the DNA and all that kind of stuff.
Cecile ends up missing her train. Shock, gasp,
Yeah.
and she gets upset about it. And a good work by Danielle Nicolette here. It seems like the character of Cecile is overreacting to the simple process of missing a train, but given what we find out later in the episode, we realize why she's having this reaction. Becky overhears that, and she decides that all this bad luck is just her getting what she deserves. So she walks away, but she's kidnapped again by the bad guys. Allegra and Cecile attempt to save her, but both of their attempts fail spectacularly, presumably because there's a device that one of the bad guys has. Jeff, I asked Dimitri about this earlier because we get another misdirect here, at least in Cecile's case, because there is this device which seems to be reversing their powers, and we see that neither of their powers are working properly. Did you think the writers were playing fair with us, given what we found out later in the episode?
No, it was a whole lot of misdirect throughout this entire episode, and now it was very confusing, because in the beginning it's okay, is it this? And then it's okay, well, is it that? And then I was okay, so her bad luck spreads? It was very confusing. They sort of hit that well so much, there was no more water. It was mud that they were pulling up. Because it was way too much.
I don't know if I entirely agree. I mean, it's a bit of a tricky business because on the one hand, you don't want to give everything away, the Chekhov's train and all of that. But I did think that the idea of introducing this device, which clearly reverses, Allegra's powers, and then,
Well, no, I didn't mind
Cecile's
that
powers.
device. It was just
No, I mean that, because you see that working on Allegra, and then you assume, well, that must be what happened to Cecile's.
I always felt like because it happened to Cecile earlier, like I was still of the mindset that it was her.
Exactly.
Yeah, that it was Becky, for whatever reason. Like I understood.
So Cecile and Allegra.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So Cecile and Allegra talk after Allegra discovers that Cecile has been sleeping in her office. Chester finds out the weird device reverses meta powers with a black crystal, and Cecile and Allegra realize Becky's engagement ring must have been one of those crystals as well. It turns out future brother-in-law Tony is the one who was in debt, so he plans to use Becky to get rich. He has her being forced to deal blackjack. Her bad luck makes him a winner. Dimitri, the episode was mainly about Cecile and Allegra's mission. How did you like their dynamic? They're not two characters that have been thrown together a lot in the past, but with Barry and Iris out of the way, we get to link a couple of characters that haven't had a lot of time together in the past. So what did you think about their dynamic and the way they stepped up in the absence of the West Allens to, basically solve the case and save the day?
I mean, I've been accused in the past of jumping too far ahead, so I will refrain from referencing later events in the episode. But I didn't hate their chemistry.
9 years in, and Dimitri is finally accepting some responsibility. I feel so happy and proud.
Yes, like Christine Sinclair winning the World Cup.
At the end of the episode. Yeah, I didn't hate it. I thought, these are two characters who haven't necessarily shared a ton of screen time. And sometimes when you put those two characters together, it can be awkward. But if you do it right, it's adorable. I didn't necessarily feel this was adorable, but I felt like it worked. Like, these two seemed like two people who work together and are at least somewhat comfortable around each other. Whether they were comfortable enough to explain later events in the episode, I'm sure will be discussed later on in the podcast. And I have no wish to jump the gun.
Dimitri is, of course, referring to the Chekhov's landlord situation, which we will be discussing later. But no, I agree with you. I think they played off each other really well, and I think it's kind of a shame that we haven't really had those two actors working together in the past. And I think they did play off each other really well, and I totally accepted the relationship they had between them. I thought it was well developed, and they played off each other very well. Anyway, back to the episode. Tony admits to Becky that he's the one who hurt Dom when Dom tried to stop him from using Becky. Allegra and Cecile try to infiltrate the casino night, but they're caught almost immediately. Chester turns off the power and they spring into action. Cecile uses her telekinesis to take Becky's ring away, and Becky's luck returns, leading to a very nice sequence of what happens when you're trying to fight someone who has luck on their side. Tony's taken out and the day is saved. Jeff, how did you like the resolution to our A plot?
Okay, it wasn't okay. I did not dislike it. I was just left with many questions. So I get it. It was the brother-in-law who ended up attacking his brother because he had gone to ask his brother to use his fiancée for her good luck so that he could make a lot of money to pay off his gambling debts. That was the truth.
And honestly, who among us has not been in that situation?
Exactly. The thing that I did not understand is, so the brother went with the husband, the soon-to-be husband, to purchase the ring. Why did they purchase a ring that would flip her powers? That's number one. Number two, she was still wearing the ring when she was dealing the blackjack to him. So why was he lucky, and why wouldn't she, like, because she's touching the cards and that kind of stuff. So I would think that would make those cards unlucky. And then she took off the ring, or I should say Cecile telepathed the ring, and then all of a sudden she was really lucky. I was so confused by what the hell this storyline was, because it's like, why would I didn't get it. I didn't. Even though Becky was wonderful, Cecile and Allegra were badass. Like, it was a good little moment. I believe they're called Bad Bitches, which I approved of. But yeah, I didn't get what the hell we were watching at the end. Like, what? Like, shouldn't he have not gotten lucky because she was unlucky? And like, why?
No, because Becky was the dealer representing the house. So her bad luck was his good luck.
Oh, her bad luck because she's the house, and the house
exactly
always wins. Okay,
and that's why he couldn't just have her sitting beside him with her good luck making him win. He had to have her as the dealer representing the house so that her bad luck would be affecting the
beneficial
house.
For him. Okay, so I get that.
Really no different than having someone, basically, stacking the deck or cheating on your behalf, except she was just doing it with her reverse luck power.
Okay, all right. Thank you for explaining that. I 100% understand that. I do not understand, why did the brother select the ring, the engagement ring, that would make her luck turn upside down? Was that just
I'm assuming when they bought the
coincidence?
ring, he didn't know that when he chose the ring, he wasn't saying, hey, do you have anything in like a nice shiny black gem that will turn my my metahuman girlfriend's powers against her? I would suspect that was the idea that, when the brother, and again, I'm doing a lot of headcanon here, but I'm guessing when the brother-in-law took his brother out to choose the ring, which they did mention that he did, the brother-in-law probably had a lot of say in what ring he chose, and probably arranged for a nice looking ring with a very large stone on it to be available for a significantly discounted price.
Okay, wait, so are we saying that this was a long con?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Now, having said that, the idea of it being a long con doesn't necessarily play into the fact that he, took her shoe and bashed his brother on the head with it.
Well, no, because I can explain that. Okay, so it's a long con. He cons his brother into getting that specific ring because that ring is going to help him out. Then, because it's his brother, and maybe they might have a really good, close relationship, he actually confesses to his brother. I'm like, hey, maybe he doesn't say about the ring in particular, but he's like, hey, your wife, I was wondering if she could help me out with her powers and this, that, or the other. And then the brother's like, no, you're not going to mooch off my wife. Like, I'm not going to pimp her out to my brother so that you can make a whole bunch of money because of your debts. And then the brother freaks out. He grabs the closest thing, which, I'm assuming is a stiletto, and then bashes his brain in, and then makes it seem like it was. Well, I don't know why he would make it seem like it was the wife, but anyway, because that sort of like, because it was a heat of passion crime, so he wasn't thinking about that. But then it worked out in his favor because for whatever reason, they gave her like a good behavior prisoner release thing to the metahuman attorney for the weekend.
Yeah, the more we talk about this episode, the more plot holes seem to appear. And I'm going to, address one of Dimitri's, ones that he mentioned earlier next, because while talking to Chester and Allegra, Cecile admits her powers were off because she was just not herself because of the family stuff. And she asks Allegra to move in and be her roommate. And again, a classic Chekhov's roommate situation. But you know what? Honestly, I like this situation because when they introduced the bad landlord earlier on, I was convinced, this is how they're going to force Chester and Allegra to be living together. That didn't happen, and I was really happy about that because these two have been dating for a week maybe of showtime, and that would have been way too insanely fast. Everyone seems happy,
Professor.
Yeah, it seems so obvious to me. And again, because when you introduce a Chekhov's landlord, you're expecting that will be the logical resolution. Instead, we got the idea that Cecile, who, as we've established, is living all alone in this house. Why not allow Allegra to move in? I know you have some issues with this, Dimitri, but everyone else seems happy. Allegra seems happy. Cecile seems happy. Chester seems happy. Although, honestly, if I were Chester visiting my girlfriend living in the same house as an extraordinarily powerful empath who could sense everything that I was feeling, I don't think I'd be comfortable visiting my girlfriend in that location. Dimitri, what do you think about the resolution to this Chekhov's landlord situation?
Given the rapid pace with which these two have gotten together, I'm guessing he won't visit her for at least 3 years. Just Allegra and Chester time moves a little slowly. But yeah, no, it does seem kind of uncomfortable. I honestly would hate being roommates with a coworker. I know Team Flash is not necessarily like, you know, a workplace in the traditional sense, but just because we work well together and we're work friends doesn't necessarily mean we're 24/7 friends. Like, that seems like a lot. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but for all you know, Allegra's a slob. For all you know, Cecile is a slob. I mean, for all you know, Allegra has a bad track record of using her roommate's toothbrush. I mean, just
Ew.
too fast. I don't know. It just, everyone was acting like, oh yeah, that's the natural thing to do. And I was just like, what? I mean, I guess headcanon is, while we haven't seen these two characters interact that much, they, are very close and comfortable with each other. But, as an audience member, I just wasn't sold on that being their relationship.
Hopefully not comfortable enough to use the toothbrush.
I mean, Cecile never even asked, do you, put the toilet paper roll so it rolls from the top like a civilized human being or from the bottom like an absolute monster?
And she also did not ask, are you a Christine Sinclair fan or a Marta fan?
Exactly. These are questions you have to ask before you let someone into your house.
Do you use forks with pies?
Headcanon, one can only assume they had these discussions, previously in the past. But it is a rather glaring plot hole.
I hope they asked the fork and the spoon thing, Professor.
Oh, God. Can you imagine if you invited someone into your home? Just imagine you invite someone into your home. They have a room there. You come down. They're sitting in the kitchen. They're eating a pie with a spoon. I mean, just get the fuck out of my house.
You have to burn the house down.
What if it's Alamadi?
Oh.
No, you still eat it with a fork.
You have to burn the house down, Dimitri. You burn the house down and never look back.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Anyway. A week later, Mark seems to be handling things much better, and the team has set up a baby shower for Barry and Iris just to remind everyone who are the stars of this show. Back at Star Labs, Chester has a new analysis of Khion that shows she's not a metahuman. She's not actually even a human. And again, classic Chekhov's new power that will play off in the season finale situation. I've not liked Khion much in this season, but in this episode, I liked her. I thought she was enjoyable. As Jeff mentioned, I really enjoyed the sequence where she was trying to figure out how to use her powers. I still wonder, as someone who's only been alive for less than 2 weeks, how she knows shit about flowers that grow in canyons and stuff like that. But still, I did like her. But Jeff, we've talked a lot about Khion, what her role will be. Getting this revelation that she's not only not, she's not Caitlin. She's not Frost. She's not even human. What do you think will be the shocking resolution to her non-human status?
Are we saying she's something else? That she's someone else?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that is true. Okay. We've been saying this, or at least I started off saying this way back in the first episode, that she has some sort of Mother Nature type of ability. Here's the thing, and we did have a name drop about them a couple of episodes ago. What if she's an avatar? Because we've seen people, not the blue cat people from the movie, that apparently everybody has seen, yet I've never met a single one of them. I'm talking about the sequel that's in the movies right now that's apparently still making a whole bunch of money. But anyway, we have met avatars in the past, and they did not know they were avatars. They did not know where their powers came from. They didn't know anything. And I would assume if you're an avatar, you're not human. And I don't believe I can recall them actually testing avatars to see what they are. They just, because of the Speed Force having an avatar and this, that, or the other, when they found the other avatars, they were like, okay, you're an avatar. So what if she is avatar-ish? I still think she's like a mother nature type of powered person, but what if she's an avatar for nature? And that's why she is able to manipulate nature and its surroundings and that sort of thing. Remember, we mentioned that it was always raining in the very first episode of the season, and it was like, the constant mentioning, oh my gosh, all this rain. Then all of a sudden, Keon was happy, sunshine in the air. This time around, they were talking about Frost, and she was able to kind of mimic Frost's powers when she kissed Mark. I love Chester's ooh reaction. That was so good. And so then all of a sudden it's snowing. So she's either, well, she's not a metahuman because she's not a human nor a meta. She's a something else. So what if she's an avatar for nature? She can manipulate anything with nature, and that would also kind of confirm the fact that she has this immense knowledge of plants and animals and stuff that I don't believe Caitlin ever knew, or clearly Frost never knew this shit. So that would add to the fact that maybe she's an avatar for nature. She has just like now this innate knowledge of how the world, but in particular like plant life, animal life, how it all sort of like coexists and how they survive and thrive on this planet.
Dimitri, what are your thoughts on Keon's status? Do you buy into the nature goddess theme or the nature avatar, sort of a Swamp Thing type character with considerably less prosthetics?
I am assuming her powers somehow relate to nature. I do think we're in a Chekhov's nature trivia kind of moment where I think in one of the next couple of episodes, someone's going to be like, hey, Keon, how do you know all this shit? And then they're going to realize, oh my God, what if Keon's powers relate to nature? And then we'll spend 3 episodes finding out that that's true. I have a prediction that that's where this is going. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I am kind of like, who cares? I mean, she like, not that I don't care what her powers are, but he's like, you're not even human. Her. I mean, we've had Kara on this show. We've had like Martian Manhunter on this in the Arrowverse. We're very familiar with non-humans who, are fine. I mean, you put Caitlin. Caitlin kind of has had multiple alter egos every time. Caitlin's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get back. But I don't know. I think You're Not Even Human was supposed to be a huge revelation the way they delivered it in the episode, and I was just like, okay.
I sort of, I agree with Jeff, and I wonder whether, the resolution of this is, that, if she is some sort of avatar or something like that, whether, she's going to have to sacrifice herself at the end of the season to save things. I don't know. I mean, it's curious. I don't see this being the sort of situation where, she and Mark ride off happily into the sunset.
But clearly he's feeling her, right, Professor? You saw the looks. Well,
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of an understandable thing. From Mark's point of view, she, aside from the hair and the pallid skin color, looks exactly like the woman that he loved. And also, when she restored him, she gave him a kiss that felt like kissing Frost. I think that's an understandable reaction on his part. So, for him to, we didn't really talk that much about it aside from talking about the montage, but for him to insist that she must have, cryogenic powers is a way of him, basically, arguing, well, she must have these powers. She must be like Frost. I think, he's basically still trying to, restore his dead ex. And, I'm not sure I think by the end of the episode, it does seem that he's given up on that. But it does seem that, the directions given to the actor playing Mark are that, he's not as intense about it as he was before. But yeah, I just don't see them, riding off happily into the sunset. I could be wrong about that, but it just seems to me that they're setting her up as, sort of, an extra dimensional entity whose sacrifice will save the world. But, it's not like we're sacrificing a human being, as human centric as that might seem.
I love the thought of those directors' notes. Like, okay, this scene, you're trying to bang your dead ex. But in this scene, you're no longer trying to bang your dead ex. And action.
Yeah.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Who among us hasn't been there?
That is true. Dimitri, may I ask you, are you enjoying the blue highlights / clip-ins a little bit more as the episodes progress?
You know what? Come to think of it, no, they look exactly the same. But,
Okay.
Speaking of the misdirects in this episode, good misdirect by Dimitri there.
Pew pew pew. I will say though, I do find Keon a breath of fresh air. I wish the writers would have come up with some way to wrap up Caitlyn's storyline, because at this point she's lost her dad, she's lost countless lovers,
She's lost her life.
her sister.
She's lost her life.
Yeah, she's dead.
She's dead.
And nobody cares.
I'm pretty sure like Barry and Iris are gonna get a happy ending at the end of this show. Given that Caitlyn's like a season 1 character, episode 1 character, it's a little bit of a shame that she, I guess, is just kind of dead.
Yeah, she's dead. Not even Carla cares. Carla's still busy at work.
Wait, what?
Her mom, Carla, she's busy at Tannhauser. She didn't even take a break.
Yeah. Maybe she'll find out she's dead someday. But given that, they seem to not really know what to do with Caitlyn, and I never took to Frost, I do find Keon like this weird kind of loopy, like almost Luna Lovegood-esque character that, is, if nothing else, is new. And so has a lot of unexplored territory for the writers. So while I do not like I have blue frosted tips, so now I am a new person costume choice, I don't mind Keon.
Before we move on to the MVP section, was there anything anyone want to mention? An Easter egg, a Hall of Shame, or a Hall of Fame moment? I'd just like to echo something that Jeff mentioned, which is when Chester found out about the kiss between Mark and Keon. The way he had that really just a delightful little actor's moment of, well, hello. I thought that was an absolutely delightful moment. And I also really liked, one of the two thugs, who was menacing Becky. I thought he was really having a lot of fun with the character as well.
Yes, I will co-sign that. Well, you're co-signing me, but I will just say, just to add on to that, I don't mind as much as Dimitri, Allegra moving in with Cecile, just because like she needs somebody in the house. Like she was like living out of her office because she didn't like the quiet of her house. Although let's be real, that office was probably going to be really quiet as well. So there's that. So I didn't mind that, but here's the thing, just to add on what y'all were saying about Chester and Allegra can never have sex in the house, like ever. Like if they're planning on, I don't know if they're already, getting it in, but if they ever plan on getting it in, it cannot be there at all, because Cecile will know it all, and, no, you can't do it in that house, period.
Well, presumably Chester has his own place. That's the only headcanon that I can accept.
Yes. I don't know. Maybe they're not going to do this because this is a happy-go-lucky show. But I'm like, you don't give a baby shower that early. Like that's just
No, God, no.
that's like
That's yeah.
calling for like bad luck to happen. Like that's way too early. Like they should have done. It should have been called like I don't know what, like a baby announcement type of thing. But the fact that they specifically said, "Oh, we're throwing you an early baby shower," like I was like, no, you don't do that early.
Yeah, but I mean, they had to find a way to bring Iris and Barry back into the team at the end of the episode. It's time for the MVP section. State which character impressed you throughout the episode and why. Once a character's been chosen, they cannot be selected again, so choose wisely. Jeff, who is your MVP and why?
Luck be a lady tonight. Becky Sharp, 100%. Even though that storyline was very confusing, was very messy, it had so many plot holes you could call that storyline Swiss cheese. Like, it was just, yeah. But Becky Sharp, our favorite Canadian PJ, was fantastic. She was bright and bubbly, a breath of fresh air. Even when she was down on her luck, she was adorable and brought an incredible energy to what could have been an incredibly forgettable A-plot because of all of the plot holes. She just brightened it up. So I have to give it to her.
Yeah, I agree. And it would have been very easy, to play a character, someone who's been lucky, for so long and is suddenly dealing with, a run of bad luck. She could have played it, very much, woe is me and negative, but she didn't do that. And I thought that was, a very positive take on the character. Dimitri, who is your MVP and why?
I gotta give this one to Allegra. I did think, for such a Allegra-centered episode, I do think this was played well. I think, her and Chuck are cute together. I think, her and Danny Nicolette kind of doing the like not quite buddy cop, but kind of buddy cop scene worked pretty decently well. I wasn't sold on the roommate situation, but I guess we'll see how it goes. And also, when she shows up to the bar casino, something about that outfit, man, she looked Fine fine. I was like, yo, Chuck, my man. Anyway, all that to say, Allegra for this episode.
I agree. Allegra has never been my favorite character since she was introduced, but I really did like her in this episode, and she would have been my choice if she hadn't already, goddamn it, been taken. Which leaves me, I will choose, Danny Nicolette, who, I've always enjoyed, in all the versions of Assistant DA Cecile Horton to DA Cecile Horton to, independent lawyer Cecile Horton. I think she did a good job of playing that, playing the conflicts that she's dealing with. And something that we talked about earlier is, as Jeff said, last episode, it did seem like they were wrapping things up too easily, that it's just like, oh, I'll stay here in the city and be a superhero and you'll go off in the country and raise our child. And, I think it was nice that they brought out the conflicts that she's dealing with, a feeling that she's not going to be there for her daughter, that, the concerns that her daughter, will see her as, a distant relative rather than a mother. And I think that Danny Nicolette did a great job of playing that. So kudos to her. Now it's time to rate the episode. How would you rate the episode on a scale of 1 to 10 lightning bolts? The point system is allowed. If you found the episode exceptional, deserving of more than a 10, you may archive the episode in the Flash Museum. Dimitri, what is your rating?
I'm going to give this episode a 9. The whole time I was watching it, I was thinking, this really recaptures some of the quirky charm of, Flash Season 1, Flash Season 2. And I shade the writing a lot, but I do want to acknowledge that, that sort of like fun silliness, but not being so silly that it's stupid, is a hard balance to strike. It's not easy. It's not straightforward, but I think the writers struck it this episode. And even though it kind of feels like a filler episode, it was a fun filler episode. I think a lot of it is driven by Becky and, the exaggerated vocal fry and, her kind of, space cadet persona. But overall, I found this episode quite fun. For an episode that doesn't even feature the main couple, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of what you said in terms of the tone of the episode is something that we haven't seen in The Flash a lot. over the past few seasons. And honestly, when I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, man, you know what? I really miss Legends of Tomorrow, because the tone of this episode reminded me to a certain extent of a Legends of Tomorrow episode, where they managed to deal with the serious stuff, but they managed to do it with humor and a lot of lightness as well. Jeffrey, what is your rating for the episode?
We almost went through an entire episode without an F-bomb being dropped, and then Dimitri dropped it twice. But I will co-sign it. Kind of, it's like teetering close to an F-bomb episode, and by F-bomb listeners, I of course mean the dreaded word filler. But it was fun, and it was really well done. Yes, plot hole palooza, and I'll be honest, because of the plot holes, I was like verging like in the 8 sort of territory, but I don't know why, but Dimitri sold it for me. I'm going to give it a 9 as well. Because it was a fun episode. Everyone really did get something to do outside of our main couple, which, they got whisked away to Coast City for massages on the beach. So outside of them, like, everyone else got something to do. It was all really interesting and entertaining. And even though it was teetering close, for at least for me, to the F word, it was still incredibly fascinating to watch. And dare I say, even though there were so many plot holes, I would say it's a very rewatchable episode. So it was a lot of fun. I'll give it a solid 9 as well.
Well, it's established canon on this episode that I am subject to peer pressure, so I will also give it a 9. Yeah, you're right. It was just a very fun episode. And we're calling it an F-word episode. The F-word should be fun.
Yes.
Regardless of the fact that this didn't advance the overall plot in any way, it was fun. We got some character development. We got to see what's happening with our characters, and they had a lot of fun while doing it. And as Dimitri said, that's something that has been, missing a lot in Flash. This did get us back to that sort of, that sense of joy that we had, in the first couple of seasons of Flash before they decided to, try to be, in the Arrow Mark II. So join us next time for a brand new installment of The Central City Citizen. Here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us.
Follow Papi Chulo Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, @Papi Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@papichuloradio.com. Are you interested in joining the Papi Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality? Email talent@papichuloradio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Papi Chulo Radio programs by visiting papichuloradio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for The Central City Citizen and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. My co-host, please wish the listeners a good night, starting with Jeff.
Have a good night, listeners. I hope you have FUN fun this weekend. Maybe catching up with You Can't Do That on Television, or watching Christine Sinclair take down Marta.
Stay tuned for the Women's World Cup this summer, depending on when you're listening to this, obviously. And Dimitri.
Good night, Central City. See y'all next week.
Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the Central City Citizen via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. New episodes release every Friday. You can also download the entire series by visiting papichuloradio.com/archives. Good night. Oh, Jeff, what is the title of the episode?
Oh, you didn't cut and paste?
I tried. It didn't work.
Okay, hold on.
It didn't save.
No, it is.
All that
It's something
time
the
was
good, the
bullshit
bad, and the
problem.
lucky. It's not that, but it's close
Good,
enough.
bad, and lucky. Okay, let's
No,
just do it. Good, bad, and
that
lucky.
is right, actually. The good, the bad, and the lucky. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to pick it up from the synopsis. Ready?
Okay.
And let's go. All the best stuff comes from Canada, just like Christine Sinclair. A joke that will mean nothing to anyone who wasn't listening to our pre-show chat.
Yeah, and Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig
She's
is
not Canadian.
She's not Canadian.
No, she's not.
Peppa Pig is obviously.
I worry that someday there's going to be a podcast about this podcast where each episode they're like, what the fuck were they talking about?
Yes.
But that aside,
Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the Central City Citizen by Apple Podcasts. I can't do it again. God damn it. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the Central City Citizen by
Sorry, I
Apple
was late.
Podcasts. 3, 2, 1. New episodes released every Friday. I couldn't get through that.
You just assassinated Dimitri, Professor.
Well, it's true. We
Do
were talking
you
about this
work
before
for the
Dimitri got here.
Batwoman writers' room? Because
No,
you
all of this
hated
was
me
just
so
us
hard,
referring back to what we talked about before the episode began when we were waiting for you. But anyway,
That shade was so hard, Dimitri got pushed down the stairs like in a damn telenovela.
picking up in 3, 2, 1. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the Central City Citizen via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. New episodes released every Friday. You can also download the entire series by visiting. I can't do it. God damn it. I'm a radio professional. 3, 2, 1.